I want you to just hold a specific image in your mind as we get into this deep dive today.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Yeah, picture a grand ancient palace, right? Massive golden pillars, and there's this lone king walking through it wearing a heavy black cloak, just exuding this terrifying, absolute authority.
It's a very powerful atmosphere.
Exactly. And now, picture a grand chessboard. But the kings, the queens, the knights, they're moving by themselves, like invisible strategic forces or just, controlling the game.
Right, the shadowy figure pulling the strings from the dark.
Yes. And watch that medieval battlefield morph right before your eyes into a sleek, modern financial district. Because power, it's totally timeless. The armor might become a tailored black suit, the mysterious businessman entering the luxury boardroom where everyone just silently watches him.
The sword becomes a leveraged buyout.
Right. And you've got gold coins falling in slow motion, luxury watches, private jets, all representing this immense wealth and influence. But the human brains operating those weapons, they haven't changed in 10,000 years. We are looking at the architecture of that influence today.
We really are. We're decoding the psychological mastery behind power.
Yeah, the shadowy architecture of human relationships. And we're drawing on what is probably the most polarizing, universally read manual of strategy out there, Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
Which is a text that makes people profoundly uncomfortable.
Oh, super uncomfortable.
And for good reason, honestly. I mean, it strips away the whole romanticized veneer of how we wish the world operated. It forces us to look at the raw mechanics of ambition. But I think it's crucial to say right out of the gate here, analyzing these laws, it is not about endorsing toxic behavior.
Right. We are not building a factory for supervillains here.
Exactly. We are here to understand human psychology.
Yeah.
Because whether you are, navigating a corporate boardroom or negotiating a freelance contract, or honestly just trying to survive a complex family dynamic, you are participating in a game with invisible rules.
Yeah, and if you don't know the rules, you're simply a pawn being moved by someone who does.
Perfectly said.
And real quick, just for you listening, whether we discuss controversial politicians or beloved tech CEOs or ruthless historical monarchs today, we are entirely impartial observers of the board. We aren't cheering for a specific team. We're not endorsing any political ideology left or right. We are simply reporting the tactical examples provided in the source material. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, the perfect place to begin is with a scenario that happens every single day. Imagine a brilliant new employee.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Yeah, they're working 80-hour weeks, right?
Yeah.
Perfectly correcting their boss's subtle mistakes in high-stakes meetings. They're single-handedly saving massive projects from going completely off the rails.
Just doing amazing work, and their intentions are pure. They just want the team to win.
Exactly, and for their reward, they aren't promoted.
Nope.
They are quietly sidelined, starved of resources, blacklisted from the important emails, and eventually fired.
Welcome to the invisible chessboard.
Right. This is the essence of the very first law: never outshine the master. And when we look at this through the lens of evolutionary psychology, it makes perfect sense.
Because of the social hierarchy stuff.
Yeah, people in positions of authority, whether they're a middle manager, a CEO, or a tribal chieftain, they are hypersensitive to their status. Their identity and their livelihood is tied to their perceived competence.
So when that junior employee politely corrects the boss in front of the whole team, they think they're providing this, helpful data point. But what they're actually doing is dropping a psychological bomb.
Precisely. They are triggering a severe ego threat. The amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain, just lights up.
It goes crazy.
The boss doesn't feel gratitude for the correction. They feel their authority eroding. They feel publicly humiliated. And logic goes completely out the window when the ego is bruised.
Oh, totally. That insecurity mutates into envy and paranoia instantly.
Right. Suddenly, that bright, capable employee is no longer an asset. They're a direct threat to the master's survival.
You see this in Hollywood all the time, right?
Oh, constantly. If a young, hungry actor completely steals a scene from an established veteran star, that veteran is going to ensure that young actors' scenes are cut in the editing room. Nobody likes watching their own light fade.
Okay, but let me push back on this a little bit because it sounds incredibly bleak.
Sure.
If I'm constantly dimming my light, if I'm actively pretending to be less capable than I actually am just to soothe my boss's fragile ego, Don't I lose my authentic self?
That's a very common concern.
Right. Isn't that just a recipe for massive, soul-crushing imposter syndrome? I'm basically lying to the world about my own potential.
I get that, and it's a very natural resistance to this idea. But it really misunderstands the execution of the law. This isn't about engaging in mindless sycophancy or intentionally doing bad work.
Okay, so what is it then?
It's about diplomacy. You don't hide your capability, you reframe the narrative of your capability.
Oh, I like that, reframing the narrative.
Right, you do phenomenal, undeniable work. But when the praise inevitably comes, you act as a strategic mirror. You publicly attribute a portion of your success to the master's excellent guidance.
So you say something like, I could never have navigated this project without the foundational strategy our director put in place.
Exactly. You shine your light, but you engineer the optics so it looks like a reflection of their sun. You protect your core identity internally, while acting as a chameleon externally to bypass their insecurities.
You feed their ego so they don't eat you.
That's a great way to put it.
But man, I can see how that requires an immense amount of emotional regulation.
Oh, it requires absolute discipline.
And that concept of controlling the narrative, it flows perfectly into the psychology of concealment, right? Specifically concealing your intentions and always saying less than necessary.
Yes, laws 3 and 4. The mechanism here is about informational asymmetry. Talking too much surrenders your control of the board.
Because humans just have this natural compulsion to fill silence.
We do. We want to be understood, we want to relate to people, we want to show off our clever plans. But when you speak constantly, you inevitably leak data.
You give away the playbook.
Right. You reveal your anxieties, your strategies, your limits.
Think about the tech world here. Apple is the absolute masterclass in this.
Oh, without a doubt.
Just consider the development of the very first iPhone. They kept it in total impenetrable stealth mode for years. Not a whisper.
Which is incredibly hard to do in that industry.
Totally. But if they had been holding press conferences, chattering about their grand intentions to disrupt the mobile market, giants like Nokia or Samsung or Google would have immediately mobilized.
They would have bought up patents, locked down supply chains.
Exactly. Built insurmountable roadblocks. By keeping their intentions entirely concealed, Apple operated in a vacuum. They controlled the entire game because no one knew a game was even being played.
And beyond just hiding corporate strategy, saying less cultivates a very specific, very powerful aura. People who speak sparingly are perceived as profound.
Yes. Every word carries immense weight.
If you think about a high-stakes negotiation, silence is a terrifying weapon. If you make an offer and the other person simply looks at you in total silence, the psychological pressure becomes agonizing.
It's so uncomfortable.
Right, and most people will start bidding against themselves, offering concessions, just to fill that quiet void and relieve the tension.
Which is a beautiful segue into another masterstroke of psychological manipulation, playing a sucker to catch a sucker.
Law 21.
The deliberate act of making your opponent feel smarter than you.
What's fascinating here is the cognitive dissonance it exploits. We just established that the ego is fragile. Well, the flip side of that fragility is arrogance.
They go hand in hand.
When you deliberately play the naive sucker, you provide massive validating fuel to the other person's superiority complex.
You let them feel like the undisputed genius in the room. You ask naive questions, you let them over-explain things to you, mansplaining essentially, but you're encouraging it.
And what happens neurologically when someone feels vastly superior? Their guard drops completely. The brain releases dopamine associated with status confirmation. They feel safe. They become careless.
Wow, so they basically disarm themselves.
Yes. They might boastfully reveal their absolute bottom line in a negotiation or detail their entire multi-year strategy to you because they categorize you as entirely harmless.
They don't view you as a threat, so they hand you all the ammunition.
Exactly. And by the time they realize you were the one quietly steering the interaction, it's far too late.
It's like wearing a camouflage of incompetence. But that requires ironclad control over your own ego. You have to sit there knowing you are brilliant and willingly let someone treat you like a fool.
You have to detach your internal worth from their external perception.
Which is so hard. But that internal control, that ability to forge your own identity, that's the core of Law 25, right? Recreating yourself. Refusing to accept the label society hands you.
Right, because society is a massive categorization machine. It wants to put you in a neat, easily understandable box.
Oh, you're the creative one. You're the reliable workhorse.
You're the romantic comedy actor. The law dictates that you must be the author of your own narrative. If an actor who is totally typecast in lighthearted rom-coms suddenly takes on a gritty, terrifying, dark role, they shatter the public's expectations.
They force the world to renegotiate the terms of their existence.
Yes, you have to treat your identity like a piece of iron on an anvil. You strike it, you shape it, you do not let the world shape it for you.
But shaping your identity doesn't mean you have to constantly fight the world to prove your uniqueness, right? Sometimes the smartest move is to completely blend in.
This brings us to Law 38. Think as you like, but behave like others.
Yeah, this is such a survival tactic for navigating environments with heavy, oppressive societal pressure. If we connect this to the bigger picture of human energy, fighting every single ideological battle is exhausting and strategically pointless.
It really is.
There's this vivid example we discussed regarding traditional family functions. Let's say a massive, highly traditional Indian wedding.
Right.
You might have deeply unconventional views on religion or politics or marriage, but if you walk into that wedding and immediately start debating every uncle and aunt, aggressively broadcasting your radical ideas, what do you actually achieve?
You achieve nothing but your own isolation.
Right. You don't change their minds. You simply mark yourself as an outcast, an exhausting presence.
And isolation weakens you. This law advises adopting a protective exterior camouflage. You participate in the rituals, you smile, you wear the expected clothes, you perform the social contract.
But
internally, your mind remains fiercely, untouchably independent. You don't waste your precious cognitive energy fighting battles over dogma with people whose identities are locked. You preserve that radical energy for the arenas where it can actually create change.
you save your ammunition. So if mastering our own surface area, controlling our ego, our silence, our identity, if that's the first phase of the board, the next phase is analyzing the pieces immediately adjacent to us, right?
The people closest to you.
The chessboard of allies, friends, enemies, and the psychological contagion they bring.
This requires a highly clinical, almost surgical approach to human relationships, which is where many people find the material confronting. It forces us to examine the utilitarian reality of the people in our orbit.
And we start with a premise that shatters everything we are taught in kindergarten. Law 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies.
Yeah, we are culturally conditioned to believe that friendship is the ultimate bedrock of trust in business and life.
Which is a beautiful sentiment, but functionally, when power, money, or high stakes are introduced, the dynamics of friendship often warp under the pressure.
The inherent danger with friends is intimacy. They know your vulnerabilities, your past failures, your insecurities. Furthermore, the egalitarian nature of friendship easily breeds envy.
Oh, that makes sense.
If you start a business with a close friend and you emerge as the clear visionary leader, they might feel they inherently deserve an equal share of the spotlight, not based on merit, but based on history. They begin to take your generosity for granted.
The fallout between Mark Zuckerberg and Eduardo Saverin over the founding of Facebook is the textbook case study here.
A perfect example.
They were close college friends who built an empire together in a dorm room. But as the power dynamic shifted, as the financial stakes became astronomical, that foundational friendship didn't protect them. It actually made the betrayal more visceral, more personal.
And ultimately led to a vicious, incredibly public legal war. The familiarity bred a sense of entitlement.
But consider the psychology of a former enemy.
Right. If you defeat someone, or you have a known rivalry, and you unexpectedly offer them an olive branch, like you hire them, or bring them into your coalition, you create a profound psychological shift.
Because they have everything to prove.
Exactly. They know they are on thin ice. They are highly motivated to demonstrate that your unexpected trust was not a miscalculation. An integrated enemy will often work twice as hard with twice the loyalty simply to secure their precarious new position.
Keep your friends close, but maybe hire your enemies. I love that, but it begs the question, how do you truly know what the people around you are thinking? How do you map the hidden agendas?
That is where the concept of casual espionage comes in. Law 14. Pose as a friend, work as a spy.
Now, this doesn't mean engaging in literal wiretapping or cinematic subterfuge, right?
No. It is about elevated active listening during seemingly low-stakes interactions.
The water cooler chat, the happy hour after work, the casual mingling at the wedding we just talked about. You are friendly, you are entirely approachable, but your internal radar is scanning at maximum capacity.
You are looking for the subtext. When someone complains about a specific department, what are they really revealing about their own insecurities?
Right. Who seems suddenly defensive when a certain budget is mentioned? What are the hidden alliances that aren't on the official organizational chart?
You ask innocent, open-ended questions and let people's natural desire to talk fill in the blanks. You gather crucial intelligence to map the power dynamics without ever raising a red flag.
But while you're mingling and gathering that data, you have to be hyper-vigilant about the emotional state of the people you're exposing yourself to. This brings us to a concept that I think is fundamentally life-changing.
Law 10, infection. Avoiding the chronically unhappy and unlucky.
We often casually refer to luck as this mystical, unpredictable force, but this law grounds bad luck in the hard reality of human behavior and neurology. It is about emotional contagion. Here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. Our brains are hardwired with mirror neurons. When we watch someone experience an emotion, the exact same neural pathways light up in our own brains. It's the biological basis for empathy, right? But it is also a massive vulnerability.
Because it means we neurologically absorb the emotional baseline of the people we surround ourselves with.
Exactly.
If you tether yourself to someone who is chronically miserable, someone who views themselves as a perpetual victim, who constantly finds the negative angle in every triumph, who actively sabotages their own success, and then complains about their bad luck.
Your mirror neurons are firing in sympathy. You are literally downloading their pessimism into your nervous system. They are literal energy vampires.
Your own motivation drops. Your perception of risk becomes skewed toward fear. You sync with them.
And you can't try to fix these people because their misery is often a core component of their identity.
You really can't. You have to cut them out. Which connects directly to the tactical advice of Law 15. Crush your enemy totally.
It sounds like a line from a medieval warlord, doesn't it?
It does. But translated into modern psychological terms, it is about the necessity of finality. A partially defeated enemy or a partially removed toxic presence will recover.
They'll sit in the shadows nursing their resentment,
waiting for a moment of weakness to enact revenge. If you are going to remove a threat, a half measure is more dangerous than no measure at all.
Think about this in the context of our personal lives. Imagine a highly toxic, manipulative relationship that you finally manage to escape. Crushing your enemy totally doesn't mean seeking revenge. It means implementing the absolute, non-negotiable, no-contact rule.
Exactly. You don't leave the door cracked open for them to text you on your birthday.
Yeah.
You don't check their social media.
You block their number, you block their accounts, you remove their physical and digital ability to access your peace. You sever the infection entirely.
Total removal is the only guarantor of safety. However, the instinct to protect yourself cannot cross the line into total withdrawal. You cannot build a fortress to protect yourself.
Right, Law 18. Isolation is strategically fatal. When the pressure is on, when the office politics become incredibly toxic, the natural human instinct is to retreat, to close your office door, put your headphones on, and just do your work, to build a wall.
But the imagery we used earlier is so vital here. You have to stay connected to that modern financial district.
If you hide in a fortress, you cut off your own intelligence network. You are completely blind to the shifting tides of the organization.
You won't see the promotion opportunities opening up, and more importantly, you won't see the political machinations moving against you until the battering ram is already breaking down your door. Power requires fluidity, connection, and visibility.
You have to be moving among the people. And as you navigate the district, you must apply extreme caution to who you interact with. You must know exactly who you are dealing with and never offend the wrong person.
Law 19. This is about looking past superficial markers of status. The organizational chart is often a lie.
Oh, we all know that one person in the company, right? They don't have a flashy title, they sit in a cubicle in the corner, they wear faded sweaters, but they happen to play golf every Sunday with the CEO.
Or they are the only person on the entire engineering team who understands the legacy code that processes all the company's revenue.
Yes. Power takes many invisible forms. If you strut into an organization, throw your weight around, and offend that quiet, unassuming person based on a superficial judgment of their importance, you might awaken a sleeping giant.
You might trigger an adversary who has massive hidden leverage over your career trajectory. You have to map the territory deeply before you make a single aggressive move.
And while you are mapping that territory, while you are figuring out who holds the real power, there is a golden rule for your own positioning. Law 20. Do not commit to anyone. Maintain your strategic independence.
The moment you commit entirely to one faction, one mentor, or one ideological camp, you surrender your flexibility. You become a known quantity. You become a pawn in their game.
I like to think of this like being a highly sought-after elite freelancer. If you sign an exclusive full-time contract with just one client, they own your time. They dictate your market worth.
Right.
But if you remain independent, if you take meetings with all the top firms, if you listen to their pitches, but you never sign away your exclusivity, your negotiating power skyrockets. Because human nature dictates that everyone desperately wants the prize they cannot fully possess.
By remaining uncommitted, you force the competing factions to continually woo you. You elevate yourself above the fray. You become the swing vote, the critical missing piece. It is a highly elevated, highly leveraged position on the chessboard.
Okay, let's take a breath and survey the board. We know how to manage our internal psychology. We've secured our perimeter. We know our allies. We've identified our enemies. We've purged the energy vampires. And we are maintaining our independence in the center of the financial district.
We're set up nicely.
So now, how do we project our power outward? How do we make the masses look at us? This is section 3, the theater of power. Designing your aura.
This phase is entirely about controlling the frame through which the world experiences you. It is the architecture of your public identity.
And the bedrock of that architecture is reputation, guarding it with your life.
Law 5. Your reputation is your most potent psychological armor. It precedes you into every room you enter. If you have meticulously cultivated a reputation for absolute ruthless efficiency, or unimpeachable honesty, or terrifying strategic brilliance, that reputation does half the heavy lifting for you before you even open your mouth.
People will yield to you simply based on the mythology surrounding your name.
Exactly. But it is incredibly fragile.
So fragile. It takes 20 years of grueling, perfect execution to build a legendary reputation, and it takes 5 minutes of lapsed judgment to shatter it into a million pieces. One public scandal, one catastrophic tweet, one caught lie.
And once the public's perception of you shifts from visionary to fraud, it is nearly impossible to change the momentum back, so you protect it with absolute ferocity.
But a good reputation is useless if you are invisible. Which brings us to the mandate of Law 6. Court attention at all costs.
To wield influence, you must be a focal point. You cannot fade into the gray hum of the background.
I always think of the Bollywood superstar Ranveer Singh when looking at this concept.
Oh, that's a brilliant example.
Right. If you look at his fashion choices on the red carpet, he doesn't just wear a standard black tuxedo like every other leading man. He wears incredibly loud, flamboyant, avant-garde, gender-fluid outfits. He wears neon colors, massive prints.
Now, maybe he genuinely loves the clothes, but strategically. It is a brilliant, calculated move to court attention.
He forces the gaze. He separates himself entirely from the sea of conformity. Whether the fashion critics love it or absolutely hate it, they are writing about him. He guarantees his hyper-relevance.
He creates a gravitational pull. However, this raises an incredibly important psychological paradox, because Law 16 dictates that you must use absence to increase respect and honor, the scarcity principle.
Okay, this is where I struggle and I want to push back a bit.
Let's hear it.
How on earth do I balance court attention at all costs with use absence? How can I be the neon-wearing superstar dominating the timeline while simultaneously being a mysterious ghost? That feels fundamentally contradictory. If I disappear, won't they just forget about me?
It seems like a contradiction until you introduce the element of timing. The key is rhythmic, strategic presence. Let's look at the psychology of scarcity. In economics, in art, and in human relationships, scarcity is the engine of value. If diamonds were as common as gravel, they would be worthless.
Right. I think of it like a decadent chocolate lava cake. If you eat it once a year on your birthday, it's a religious experience. If you are forced to eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a week, the thought of it makes you nauseous.
That's it exactly. Overexposure dilutes impact. If you are constantly available, constantly posting every waking thought on social media, constantly speaking up in every single minor meeting just to be heard, your presence becomes cheap. It becomes a commodity.
So how do you resolve the paradox?
You court massive, undeniable attention with a bold move, a groundbreaking project, a stunning performance, a controversial statement. You spike the world's attention. And then, at the absolute zenith of the conversation, you vanish.
You pull the dessert away while they are still hungry.
You step back into the shadows. You let them debate your last move. You let them crave your return. And when you finally do step back into the light, your presence is no longer just another post on the timeline. It is treated as a major cultural event. You control the rhythm of visibility.
And while you are stepping in and out of the shadows, you apply another layer of psychological pressure, cultivating an air of unpredictability, keeping people in suspended terror.
Law 17. Human beings are fundamentally pattern recognition machines. We evolved to find comfort in predictability.
If we know the lion always drinks at the watering hole at noon, we know to avoid the watering hole at noon. We feel safe.
Exactly. When a person's behavior is entirely predictable, we feel a subconscious sense of power over them because we can model their future actions in our minds.
So if you want power, you have to shatter the model. You keep them guessing.
If you always react to bad news with anger, your rivals will factor that anger into their plans. But if they deliver bad news and you just smile calmly and offer them a cup of tea, you completely short-circuit their programming.
They stay defensive. They can't plan an attack because they have no idea where you will be standing or how you will react.
It generates a pervasive, low-level anxiety in your adversaries. They're always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Now, to navigate all of this tension without coming across as like an erratic, unhinged maniac, you must master the art of the perfect courtier. Law 24.
This is high-level social intelligence. It's the ability to read the micro-expressions in a room, knowing how to flatter the king without sounding like a desperate sycophant.
Knowing how to yield to a superior's terrible idea in public while subtly advancing your own agenda in private, it's navigating the labyrinth of power structures without ever triggering a direct, messy, career-ending confrontation.
It is diplomatic grace, which builds perfectly into the ultimate expression of aura. Law 34. Acting like a king to be treated like one. Being royal in your own fashion.
Let's bring back that lone king walking through the Golden Palace. When we look at figures like Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi or the legendary industrialist Ratan Tata, regardless of your personal politics or business philosophies, you have to acknowledge their mastery of this specific law.
It's in their posture.
It's in the absolute, unshakable dignity of their body language. They project a frequency that commands respect before they even utter a single syllable.
What's vital to understand here is that this is not about arrogance. Arrogance is noisy. Arrogance is a mask desperately trying to cover up deep insecurity. Being royal in your own fashion is about establishing impenetrable, silent boundaries of self-worth.
People subconsciously react to the psychological frame we set for ourselves.
Right? If you walk into a room with your shoulders slumped, apologizing for your existence, the world will treat you like a doormat. But if you hold yourself with immense respect, like that lone ruler walking through a golden palace, the world will instinctively, subconsciously adopt your frame.
They will treat you like royalty because you have given them no other option. You demand respect simply by existing in a state of self-assuredness.
And a key component of maintaining that royal frame is emotional control. Specifically, Law 36. The ability to disdain the things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge.
Think about the mechanics of power here. If you publicly show that you are deeply, visibly bothered by something you cannot attain, let's say a bitter rival wins a massive industry award, or you are passed over for a promotion you felt you deserved, you reveal a massive vulnerability.
You show the world that this external event has the power to dictate your emotional state. You hand your power to your rival.
So if a competitor goes viral and gets 1 million followers, you don't go on a podcast and post a bitter multi-tweet rant complaining about how the algorithm is unfair. You don't even acknowledge it.
You treat their success as if it is a microscopic speck of dust on your tailored suit.
Yes. It is so far beneath your royal notice that it doesn't even register on your radar. That absolute indifference is terrifyingly powerful. It preserves your aura.
And to cement that aura in the minds of the public, you utilize the final law of this phase, Law 37, creating compelling spectacles.
This takes courting attention and elevates it to a cinematic, almost religious level. We are talking about bypassing human logic entirely and striking directly at the emotional core of the brain.
You don't just give a speech with bullet points. You use grand visual drama, massive symbols, swelling music.
Think of a meticulously engineered political rally or an Apple keynote presentation. The lighting, the timing, the massive screens, it is designed to overwhelm the senses.
Because words can be debated. A logical argument can be deconstructed and countered by a sharper logician, but a compelling visual spectacle. It doesn't ask for debate. It creates an emotional reality that people simply accept and internalize.
It makes them feel powerful just by witnessing it. Okay, so we have built the aura, We look the part, we command the room, we are entirely unpredictable, and we have the audience captivated by the spectacle. But aura is ultimately passive, right? True power requires active leverage.
It's time to look at how to pull the invisible strings to make people do what we want.
Exactly. Let's move into section 4, the architecture of influence. Bait, dependency, and the terrifying concept of the thumbscrew.
This is the transition from defense to offense. How do you actively compel the pieces on the board to move in your favor, thinking it was their idea all along?
It starts with Law 8. Make other people come to you, using bait if necessary.
In any negotiation, conflict, or sales pitch, the person who has to travel, the person who initiates the meeting, who enters the other person's office, is inherently operating from a deficit of power. They are stepping onto foreign territory. They are the supplicant.
So you flip the script. You create irresistible bait. If you are a consultant, you don't send 500 desperate cold emails begging executives for 15 minutes of their time. You publish an incredibly high-value, totally free piece of proprietary research online. You create magnetic content.
You put out golden bait that makes the executives realize they have a problem only you can solve, and they reach out to you.
Suddenly, they're asking for your time. The power dynamic is completely inverted.
And once they come into your ecosystem, you lock the doors by employing Law 11, learning to keep people dependent on you.
We brought up Apple earlier regarding secrecy, but they're also the undisputed heavyweight champions of dependency.
They don't just sell you a piece of glass and metal. They sell you a sticky, deeply integrated ecosystem. Your iPhone automatically syncs to your MacBook. Your AirPods seamlessly switch between devices. Your family's location is tracked on their app.
And every photo you've taken in the last decade is locked inside their iCloud storage.
It's a golden cage.
It really is. If I decide tomorrow that I want to switch to a competitor's phone because it has a slightly better camera, the sheer psychological and logistical nightmare of migrating all my data, repurchasing apps, and breaking the seamless workflow of my life is too overwhelming.
You don't switch.
I don't switch. They have trapped me in a web of convenience. By making themselves entirely irreplaceable to the daily functioning of my life, they guarantee my continuous compliance and my money.
Dependency is the absolute bedrock of long-term influence. If a king's subjects need him for protection and grain, they cannot overthrow him. But how do you initiate these relationships of dependency? How do you get people to agree to help you build your empire in the first place?
That is the genius of Law 13. Appealing to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude. I love this concept because it strips away all our polite societal fiction.
It's very pragmatic.
Let's bring this down to a hyper-practical, everyday level. Imagine you have family coming to town and you desperately need to use your neighbor's extra parking space for the weekend. If you knock on their door and say, "Please, I'm so stressed, my mother-in-law's coming, I really need a favor, please have mercy on me," they might say yes, but internally, they resent you.
You are a burden. You are draining their resources, you are relying on charity, and charity exhausts the giver.
But if you appeal to their self-interest,
If you knock on the door and say, "Hey, I noticed your driveway is getting repaved next month. If you let me use your spot this weekend, I will happily let you park in my garage for the entire month of December to keep your car out of the snow."
the dynamic is instantly transformed from a plea for charity into a highly lucrative transaction. You have aligned your immediate need with their future desire.
They are doing you a favor, but they were doing it entirely because it enriches them.
You never rely on the goodness of someone's heart when you can rely on their self-interest. And if you take that concept of self-interest and scale it up to a massive societal level, you arrive at Law 27, playing on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following.
Humans suffer from a profound existential void. We are desperate for meaning. We want to be part of a tribe, something larger and more significant than our mundane individual lives.
Look at the modern landscape of fitness gurus, extreme diet influencers, or even cryptocurrency communities. They are not just selling a workout plan or a digital coin, they are selling an identity.
They provide the three pillars of a cult: a charismatic leader, a set of exclusionary rituals, like waking up at 4 a.m. to take an ice bath, and a strict us versus them mentality.
They convince their followers that they are the enlightened few, fighting against the lazy, toxic mainstream.
If you can provide people with a belief system that fills their psychological void, they will defend you with absolute, uncritical devotion.
It's the ultimate golden cage. It looks like an exclusive luxury club you desperately want to join. But the person at the center holds all your psychological leverage. And a massive part of building that illusion involves Law 32. playing to people's fantasies.
Because the truth of daily life is often harsh, repetitive, and deeply unromantic. People do not want cold, hard facts. They want to be transported.
Think about the marketing behind a $30,000 luxury watch. If you look at the advertisement in a glossy magazine, they don't give you a schematic of the internal gears. They don't talk about the tensile strength of the spring.
They don't sell a machine that tells time. Your $5 phone tells time more accurately.
Right. They sell a fantasy. They sell the fantasy of legacy. They sell the dream of being James Bond, sitting at a baccarat table in Monaco, exuding effortless wealth and masculine danger.
They sell an escape from the buyer's boring commute and middle management job. If you can tap into a collective, unspoken fantasy, you bypass logic entirely and gain limitless access to their desires and their wallets.
Which brings us to the surgical strike of psychological leverage, the most potent and perhaps the most dangerous tool in the entire arsenal. Law 33, discovering each man's thumbscrew.
The thumbscrew. It evokes this image of a medieval torture device, finding exactly where it hurts the most and applying pressure.
It is a metaphor for a person's deepest, most closely guarded psychological vulnerability. No matter how powerful or composed someone appears, every single human being has a void.
It might be a desperate childhood need for parental validation. It might be a crippling hidden fear of financial ruin. It might be a secret burning resentment toward a specific colleague.
How do you find it without them knowing you're looking for it?
You observe the extremes of their behavior. People always overcompensate around their thumbscrew. You pay close attention to what they consistently complain about, or more tellingly, what they incessantly boast about.
So the executive who literally cannot stop bragging about his wealth, his cars, his expensive vacations.
He is broadcasting a profound, agonizing insecurity about his actual intrinsic self-worth.
His ego is a balloon, and if you know where the knot is, you can control the air. Once you map that emotional pressure point, you know exactly what kind of validation to feed them to make them pliant, or exactly what subtle threat to imply to make them panic. You hold the invisible lever to their behavior.
So we have mapped the psychology, we have aligned our forces, we project an undeniable aura, and we hold the psychological leverage, the thumbscrews of the people across the board. Now the theory ends.
The game begins. Section 5. Tactical execution. This is the battlefield. This is where the truly powerful separate themselves from the armchair philosophers. It is about boldness, timing, and managing the inevitable blood on the floor.
Let's start with the opening strike, Law 9. Win through your actions, never through argument.
Arguing is a fundamentally flawed strategy for gaining power because it inherently triggers the other person's defensive perimeter. When you engage in a verbal debate, especially in a public setting, the stakes immediately shift from finding the truth to protecting the ego.
Even if your logic is flawless, if your data is irrefutable, the other person will dig their heels into the dirt just to avoid the public humiliation of conceding defeat.
But action bypasses the debate completely. If a senior manager says your proposed marketing strategy is impossible and will never work, you don't stand there and argue with them for an hour. You don't try to convince them with a PowerPoint presentation.
You just quietly go, build a prototype of the campaign, run a small test, and generate a massive return on investment. The completed, successful action acts as a silent, undeniable force.
It strips them of all their verbal defenses without you having to utter a single confrontational word. It is the ultimate display of competence. Action is undeniable.
But when that action results in a massive victory, how is the credit distributed? This brings us to a highly cynical, but incredibly prevalent corporate maneuver.
Laws 7 and 26. Getting others to do the work for you, but always taking the credit while keeping your own hands perfectly clean.
The dynamic of the proxy. A brilliant leader sits at the center of the web, absorbing the light of success, but deflecting the heat of unpopular decisions.
We see this in corporate restructuring all the time. The company has a record-breaking year. The stock is soaring. The CEO stands alone on the stage, bathing in the applause, accepting the massive bonus, even though it was the engineering team and the sales force working 80-hour weeks that actually built the product. The leader takes the glory.
But fast forward 2 years. The economy turns. The company needs to execute a brutal, morale-destroying mass layoff of 1,000 people. Does the CEO walk the floor and fire people personally?
Rarely. They deploy a proxy. An HR director or a newly hired vice president of restructuring is sent in to swing the axe. The proxy delivers the devastating news. The proxy absorbs the hatred, the tears, and the anger of the workforce and the CEO.
They issue a carefully crafted, somber email about difficult times, shielding their own reputation from the direct, visceral hatred. They keep their hands clean.
Okay, I have to challenge this one because this feels incredibly dangerous. If a CEO constantly pushes the dirty work onto HR and only steps up for the applause, won't the workforce eventually see right through it? Won't they realize the leader is a coward who lacks basic accountability? This seems like a recipe for a mutiny.
This raises an important question, and your instinct is completely correct. If this law is executed clumsily or overused, it breeds immense toxic resentment. The workforce is not stupid.
Right.
The mastery of keeping your hands clean is a high-wire theatrical performance. The leader must never appear cowardly. They must take fierce public responsibility for managing the crisis. They must position themselves as the tireless savior steering the ship through the storm while keeping their hands completely clean of the initial offense or the brutal face-to-face execution of the damage.
You don't hide from the problem, you just make sure you aren't the one holding the bloody knife. It's the illusion of accountability without the stain of cruelty. Fascinating.
And speaking of illusions, let's look at how to lower an opponent's guard just before you strike. Law 12. Using selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim.
In the arena of power, everyone is operating with their shields raised. We naturally suspect the motives of anyone trying to negotiate with us.
But if that person suddenly sits down and confesses a small, seemingly embarrassing fault, or if they unexpectedly send an incredibly thoughtful, personalized gift to your office before the negotiation even begins.
It creates a massive glitch in our defense programming. Our brain processes the generosity, the vulnerability, and thinks, oh, they're honest, they're kind, I can trust them. The shield drops.
But it was a meticulously calculated Trojan horse. They used a small piece of manufactured honesty to bypass your defenses so they could deliver the massive strategic blow when you least expect it.
Weaponized vulnerability. Now, what if you find yourself on the receiving end of a massive, overwhelming attack? What if the competitor is bigger, stronger, and is currently crushing you?
You deploy Law 22, the surrender tactic, transforming weakness into power.
The ego demands that we fight to the bitter, bloody end. But tactical yielding is the mark of a grandmaster. If you are clearly losing a war, fighting a scorched earth defense only depletes your remaining precious resources.
So you surrender, you wave the white flag, you yield. But you yield strategically. By surrendering, you completely alter the psychological state of your opponent. You deny them the satisfaction of totally crushing you in battle.
And more importantly, you make them overconfident. They think the war is over, they relax, they throw a victory party.
And while they are celebrating and becoming careless, you are using the time you bought to regroup, analyze the fatal flaws in their attack, and prepare a devastating counteroffensive.
You lose the battle on purpose to win the war. You preserve your core. And when you are finally ready to launch that counteroffensive, you apply Law 23. Concentrate your forces.
Do not spread yourself thin. In military strategy, if you spread your army across a massive front line, you are weak everywhere.
Let's apply this to the modern business landscape, specifically startups. If you are a young founder with limited seed capital and a small team of engineers, you do not try to build 10 different mediocre software products to try and capture every possible demographic.
That is diluting your energy. You concentrate every single ounce of your talent, every dollar of your funding, and every waking hour into building one absolute, undeniable, world-class product.
You strike the market with a laser beam, not a diffused floodlight. Concentration creates breakthrough velocity. When you finally make that concentrated strike, you must execute Law 28. Enter action with boldness.
Hesitation is a fatal disease on the chessboard. If you enter a room to pitch a multi-million-dollar idea, or if you launch a controversial new product and you do it with timidity, constantly apologizing, second-guessing yourself, the market or your opponent smells the self-doubt.
Hesitation creates micro gaps in your armor, and enemies will aggressively exploit those gaps.
Conversely, absolute boldness acts as an incredible force multiplier. It masks a multitude of small logistical errors. Even if your plan isn't perfect, if you execute it with unapologetic, terrifying boldness, it shocks the system. It puts everyone else on their back foot. It forces the world to react to your momentum.
But boldness without strategy is just kamikaze theater, which is why boldness must be tethered to the mandate of Law 29. Plan all the way to the end.
You cannot just be bold and hope the universe rewards your bravery. You have to map out the entire decision tree.
If I make this aggressive move, what are the 3 possible ways my rival will react? If they choose option A, what is my immediate counter move? You have to visualize the endgame, or you will be completely blindsided by the unintended consequences of your own bold strike.
You have to see the checkmate before you move the first pawn. And as you execute this flawless multi-step plan, the audience must never see the machinery working. You must make your accomplishment seem entirely effortless. Law 30.
Hide the sweat. This is such a fascinating psychological trick. I mean, let's just look at sports history. Think of cricket legends like Virat Kohli or Sachin Tendulkar, or Roger Federer in tennis. When you watch them perform at their peak, their mastery looks like pure magic. It looks like they were simply born with a bat or a racket in their hand, hitting impossible shots with fluid, effortless, poetic grace.
But what the screaming fans in the stadium do not see are the thousands of hours of grueling, agonizing, repetitive practice. The blistered hands, the early mornings, the obsessive analysis of tape, the relentless, punishing discipline.
If they came out and showed the world exactly how brutally hard it was, if they complained about the pain, it would humanize them. It would make them normal, hardworking people. But by masking the effort, by making the impossible look effortless, they appear almost superhuman.
They create an aura of godlike, innate talent. You never let them see you sweat, because sweat destroys the myth.
And to maximize the impact of that effortless, bold execution, you must master the invisible dimension of strategy. Law 35, master the art of timing.
Timing is the ultimate multiplier of force. Steve Jobs and the launch of the iPod is the perfect distillation of this. Apple did not invent digital music. MP3 players existed for years before the iPod. They were clunky, yes, but the technology was there. Jobs didn't rush to be first. He waited. He mastered the timing.
He waited until the exact moment when global internet speeds were finally fast enough to download a song in seconds rather than hours. He waited until digital music libraries on computers were becoming mainstream.
He aligned his bold, concentrated action with the exact perfect cultural and technological window. If he had launched the iPod 3 years earlier, it would have failed miserably due to terrible internet infrastructure. 3 years later, a competitor would have already dominated the market.
Timing is everything. You have to read the clock as well as you read the board.
And finally, our last tactical maneuver. The ultimate test of your emotional control versus theirs. Law 39. Stir up waters to catch fish.
I want to bring back that cinematic imagery from the beginning of our deep dive. The close-up of the intense eyes, reflecting a burning chessboard. If you can control your opponent's emotional state, you own them. If you are in a massive high-stakes negotiation and you subtly drop a metaphorical bomb into the room, like a shocking piece of opposition research or a subtle but deeply personal insult regarding their thumbscrew, and you manage to stay perfectly, chillingly calm while the other side completely erupts in anger or panic.
You have won. Anger makes humans incredibly irrational. Fear makes us myopic and short-sighted. When you stir the waters, when you force them into an amygdala hijack, they will make critical, sloppy mistakes. They will reveal information they meant to hide. They will storm out of the room, abandoning their leverage.
And you remain the immovable anchor. You calmly collect the pieces they knock off the board in their rage. So we have reached the end of the board. What does this massive influx of strategy mean for you, the listener?
Let's take a deep breath and recap this incredible journey.
We have seen how strategy fundamentally shapes human relationships, transforming us from passive pawns moved by invisible forces into the grandmasters manipulating the pieces. We started with the psychology of perception, controlling our ego, hiding our intentions in silence, and forging our own identities on the anvil.
We navigated the treacherous waters of alliances, learning why enemies can be more useful than friends, how to avoid the infection of misery, and the immense power of remaining an independent swing vote.
We designed an impenetrable royal aura, balancing the paradox of courting attention while mastering the scarcity of absence. We explored the dark architecture of influence, weaving webs of dependency, appealing to raw self-interest, and locating the psychological thumbscrews of our rivals.
And finally, we stepped onto the battlefield, executing our plans with concentrated boldness, hiding the sweat of our labor, mastering the timing of our strikes, and staying entirely calm while the chessboard burns around us.
The mastery of power is fundamentally, at its core, the mastery of yourself and the psychology of others. You do not have to become a ruthless Machiavellian villain to use this information.
That is the crucial takeaway. It is about defensive awareness, not necessarily offensive malice.
Exactly. By understanding the mechanics of these laws, you ensure that no one can ever use them against you in the dark. You learn to recognize the shiny bait before you bite it. You see the hidden proxy hands maneuvering in the boardroom. You protect your own energy from vampires, and you guard your reputation with your life. You take control of the game.
But if we pull the camera all the way back, if we connect this relentless pursuit of strategy to the bigger picture of the human experience, it leaves us with a rather profound, almost haunting paradox.
Oh, I like where this is going.
If power is truly never given, but always taken, and if everyone at the absolute top of the hierarchy is endlessly, exhaustingly playing this game of shadows, constantly wearing masks, constantly concealing their true intentions, constantly scanning the room for their neighbor's thumbscrew, is true intimacy the ultimate casualty?
Wow.
Is the ability to be genuinely vulnerable, to exist without a mask, the ultimate luxury that the powerful can never afford? Is taking off the heavy crown and stepping entirely away from the grand chessboard the only real freedom a person can achieve?
Now that is something to chew on. Is the ultimate expression of power actually having the luxury, the profound freedom to stop playing the game altogether? I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration of the invisible rules helps you master strategy, master influence, and ultimately master yourself. Remember the lone king in the golden palace, the invisible strings of the board, and the burning ambition of the financial district. Power is never given, it is taken. Until next time, keep your eyes open and watch your next move.